In the middle of a busy city, a blind woman was just trying to make her way to the bus stop. Then a police officer walked up, shouted at her, and ripped the cane from her hands. People started to notice, phones went up. Moments later, that cane was snapped in half, right in front of a silent crowd. She didn't yell, she didn't fight. She just stood there until one man stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't rush. He showed a badge and said calmly, "I'm with the FBI, and that's my mother." The city bustled behind her footsteps, engines, impatient horns. Mara moved slowly along the sidewalk, her white cane tapping in rhythm with each measured step. She wore a beige trench coat faded by time and oversized sunglasses that rested gently on the bridge of her nose. Her jaw was firm, but her brows pinched with focus. From across the street, Officer Knox, mid-30s, tall, stocky white, watched. His mirrored sunglasses hid his eyes, but his body language was sharp shoulders, squared hands on his belt. He saw her and muttered under his breath, "Jesus," blocking half the damn sidewalk. Then he started walking toward her, cutting through the crowd like he owned the block. Ma'am Knox barked as he stopped in front of her, voice louder than necessary. "You know you're in the middle of the main path, right?" Mara stopped tapping. She turned her head slightly as if to catch where his voice had landed. "I'm just trying to get to the bus stop." Knox glanced around dramatically. "Well, this isn't it." "I know," she replied calmly. "I have to pass through here." Knox raised a brow. "You got any ID?" Her lips parted. "Excuse me, you heard me." "Proof. You're actually blind, lot of fakers out here these days." A couple nearby pedestrians slowed their steps. One young boy even lifted his phone. Mara stood straighter. "I'm not sure what you're suggesting." "I'm not suggesting anything. Just doing my job." Knox took a step forward, towering over her. "Let me hold that cane for a sec." Before she could respond, he yanked it from her grip. Mara stumbled slightly, hands reaching out toward the empty air. Gasps scattered through the onlookers. "Let's see how blind you really are." Knox muttered, lifting the cane like it was some kind of toy. Mara turned her face toward him, voice tighter now. "Please return it. That's not just a stick to me." He smirked. "You talk real proper. Got a job?" "That's none of your business." She answered, her voice low but firm. "Please." Knox didn't move. A boy with a backpack whispered to his friend, "Why's that cop messing with her like that?" Another man in a charcoal suit standing a few feet away paused with his phone in hand but didn't lift it. His eyes narrowed, not at Mara, but at Knox. He didn't look surprised. Just waiting. Knox chuckled to himself and spun the cane in his hand like a baton. Then he snapped, "You know what? You're holding up traffic. Get moving." He shoved the cane back toward her chest, not gently. It missed. The tip hit the pavement. She bent slowly to retrieve it, fingers brushing along the curb. That's when Knox said it. "You got a kid. Maybe he can come teach you how to walk right." Mara froze for half a second. Then standing upright, she said, "He's not far, and he's paying attention." Her tone didn't rise, it dropped. Measured heavy enough to still the boy with the phone. Knox scoffed. "Yeah, maybe he should come get you off this sidewalk." Mara didn't answer. She just stood there, taller than before, hands loose at her sides. A faint buzz echoed through the air. The man in the charcoal suit adjusted his earpiece and took one silent step forward. A small crowd had gathered now, strangers frozen mid-step, some filming, others just watching. Mara clutched her cane, now slightly bent, both hands wrapped tightly around it. Knox turned to face the crowd. "Back it up, folks. Just dealing with a situation." "You call this dealing?" a middle-aged woman muttered. Knox shot her a look. She backed off, but didn't leave. Mara stood her ground. "Officer, I'm asking you to stop. You've done enough." "Oh, I've barely started." Knox sneered. "We've got rules in this city. And rule number 1. Don't pretend you own the sidewalk. I don't pretend anything," Mara said, her voice flat now, controlled. A young officer jogged up beside Knox. Officer Drew, early 20s, rookie haircut, nervous energy. Sir, dispatch wants an update. Should we escalate? Knox nodded toward Mara. Yeah, possible obstruction, maybe resisting. Drew blinked. Resisting what she's not. Knox cut him off. Just log it, I'll handle the report. Mara tilted her head slightly toward the new voice. Are you a father, officer? She asked softly. Drew paused. Yes, ma'am. Then teach your child better than what you're watching now. The words landed like a stone. Suddenly, the man in the charcoal suit, still at the edge, lowered his phone without recording. He reached into his jacket, but only adjusted his collar. Why didn't he record? Why was his focus entirely on Knox, not Mara? His eyes flickered to Drew for just a second, a flicker of warning or recognition. Knox turned to the man. You got something to say? The man smiled politely. No, sir, just observing. Knox snorted. Then keep watching. You'll learn something. A city bus pulled up across the street. Nobody got off. The driver stared at Knox through the windshield, then slowly pulled away, his head shaking. No words, no horn, just silent judgment. Knox cracked his neck and turned back to Mara. Last chance. Either get out of here, or I'll make you. Mara exhaled through her nose. What exactly would you be making me do? Leave crawl. Doesn't matter to me. Just not stand here acting like you're above everyone. She didn't move. Knox's grip tightened on the cane still in her hand. With a snap, he yanked it away and raised it like a club. Let's see what happens when we remove the props. Crack. The sound echoed off the buildings. The cane broke in two. Gasps from the crowd. A woman cried out. Mara staggered back, not from the blow, but from the shock. Her fingers clutched air. One half of the cane clattered to the pavement beside her foot. Officer Drew took a step forward. Sir, stand down. Knox snapped. She's just making a scene. A teenage girl in the crowd muttered, You're the one making a scene. Knox turned, flared nostrils, eyes blazing. But then the man in the suit pulled out a slim leather case from his jacket and began walking toward them. Calm. Steady. And for the first time, Knox's face twitched. The cane lay in two pieces, one at Mara's feet, the other still gripped in Knox's hand, trembling slightly. For a moment, the street went silent. Only the buzz of a passing motorcycle remained. Then a voice cut through the stillness. Calm, firm, measured. That's enough. All eyes turned to the man in the charcoal suit. He stood beside Knox, now holding out a small leather ID case open. His tone didn't rise, but it filled the space. Special Agent Eli, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The bystanders recoiled. Not from Eli, but from the realization one woman clutched her chest. Someone whispered, He's FBI. Knox squinted at the badge, then barked a laugh. Fake. You expect me to fall for that? Eli didn't blink. You assaulted a civilian in uniform on record with multiple witnesses. I'd stop talking. I did my job. She refused to move. She was standing still. That's not obstruction. Eli replied coolly. Knox glanced briefly at Officer Drew, who now looked away just slightly too fast. Why didn't he back Knox up? What had he realized? Knox tried again. You're not my superior, I am today. Eli said, You're under review. Step away from the woman. Knox didn't move, but the veins on his neck began to show. Eli leaned slightly toward him, his voice dropping. I'd prefer not to escalate, but if you push me, I will bury your career in paperwork so thick you'll need a search warrant to find it. Eli's fingers brushed a button on his earpiece, but he didn't press it. Why didn't he call backup? Was someone already listening? Knox growled low. You've got no idea who you're messing with. No, Eli said without missing a beat. You don't. He took a step to the side, revealing Mara still standing, still proud. Then Eli raised his voice. My name is Elijah Kane, and that woman you just assaulted, that's my mother. Knox blinked. His mouth opened, but no sound came. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Even Drew took a step back. You just broke a federal agent's mother's cane in broad daylight. Eli continued, his voice tightening. And you smirked doing it. Mara didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her silence now screamed louder than any protest. A girl in the crowd wiped a tear. I thought she was just... She's his mother. The boy beside her murmured. Across the street, on the rooftop of a small cafe, a camera crew zoomed in. Their red light blinked silently. The city was already watching. Knox opened his mouth again, but Drew stepped forward this time. "Sir," he said slowly, "we need to call this in. Right now." Eli looked down at the two cane halves, then looked up at Knox. "You crossed a line," he said, "flat. And it's not the kind you walk back over." Knox's hand dropped to his belt, grazing the holster just enough to draw attention. Eli's tone didn't shift, but his body did. He stepped between Mara and the threat without hesitation. "No weapons, not unless you want this to end worse than it already has." The crowd tensed. A child's voice broke the silence. "Mom, is he gonna shoot her?" The mother pulled him close. "No, baby. Not today." Knox hesitated. His fingers twitched, then slowly moved away from the holster. He looked around and for the first time truly saw the eyes on him. Phones up, cameras rolling. No one was blinking. Officer Drew stepped beside him, voice quiet but clear. "You should stop." Sir Knox turned sharply. "What did you say?" "I said stop." Drew's hands were shaking slightly, but he held his ground. "I'm not backing this." The uniformed officer who had followed every order now turned. A younger man, choosing integrity over blind loyalty on record. Knox's face twisted. "You don't know what you're doing, rookie." Drew's voice steadied. "Yeah, I think I do." Eli stepped forward again. "We're done here. You'll surrender your badge." "Right now." Knox looked like he might explode, but instead, he stood still. Red-faced, breath, ragged. Then a deep voice from the crowd called out, "You just messed with the wrong family, man." Everyone turned. It was the city's police commissioner. He didn't speak again. He didn't need to. Behind him, an unmarked black SUV pulled up to the curb. Its door opened. Inside sat a silent driver in a dark suit holding out a small black case labeled Internal Affairs. Knox stood stiff, sweating now under the collar. His smirk was gone, only his jaw clenched. The commissioner stepped forward, face stone cold. "You've embarrassed this department. In public, with witnesses. You think we can clean this up for you?" Knox opened his mouth, but nothing came. The man he once bragged about knowing now wouldn't look him in the eye. Eli glanced sideways just briefly toward the black SUV. The commissioner nodded in return. Who was actually in charge here? Who gave the real order? Knox's voice cracked. "You're gonna believe them over me." The commissioner turned slowly. "No, I'm believing what I see with my own eyes. And I see a man who broke a blind woman's cane in front of half the city." Officer Drew handed over his body cam. "It's all on here, sir." Knox staggered back like he'd been punched. You recorded me." Drew didn't flinch. "It's protocol." "You forgot that when you broke the law." Mara didn't speak. She didn't gloat. She simply bent down and picked up the two broken pieces of her cane, then handed them together to Eli. He took them gently. "I'll keep this for the investigation." Mara's face didn't show anger, but her head tilted slightly toward the commissioner. Why did he avoid meeting her gaze? Was it guilt or fear of recognition? Knox's knees buckled slightly. This is all for show." Eli stared him down. "It's for justice." The commissioner looked at Drew. "Escort him to the SUV. Don't speak. Don't answer questions." Drew nodded once Knox didn't. Drew took Knox's arm. Not rough. Not kind. Just final. As Knox passed by Mara, she turned her head toward him. Her voice was almost a whisper. "You didn't just break my cane. You tried to break who I am." Knox didn't answer. Couldn't. For the first time all day, he looked small. A reporter slipped through the crowd. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" Eli stepped between them. "No interviews." Mara placed a hand on his arm. "Let them listen." She faced the crowd, not the camera. "My name is Mara Kane. I taught public school in this city for 27 years. I lost my sight, not my voice." People went silent. Even cars seemed to hush. A woman in the back whispered, "Kane, why does that name sound familiar?" Was there more to Mara than just being Eli's mother? Eli watched the reporter quietly fold her notepad and step back without being told to. Something about Mara's tone had shut everything down without a single demand. An older man in a wheelchair rolled up beside her. "I saw everything, and I've lived here longer than most. I've never seen someone stand so still and win like that." Mara turned toward him, smiled faintly. "We don't win. We endure." A sudden gust of wind swept through the street, rustling coats and wrappers, and carried the two snapped pieces of Mara's cane a few inches apart again on the pavement, perfectly parallel. Not broken. Just paused. Knox stood handcuffed beside the unmarked SUV. His posture stiffened when Eli approached, but it wasn't defiant anymore. It was defense. Eli didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. "You know what's worse than hurting a blind woman?" Eli asked. Knox said nothing. "Hurting a federal witness." The commissioner stiffened. "She was in protection." Eli nodded. "She's been under federal observation for months. Part of a sealed case. You just compromised a federal security perimeter on camera." Knox's knees buckled. "I didn't know." "You didn't ask," Eli snapped. "Because people like you think knowing everything means owning everything." Eli turned to the commissioner. The cane she carried, its custom-coded, micro-embedded tracking, issued only to protected informants under Tier 1 designation. The commissioner's mouth dropped. "She's Tier 1. Eli nodded once. "Was." Mara approached. Now calm, quiet. Each step, a reclaiming of space. Knox looked up at her like she was someone else entirely. "Who are you?" he whispered. Mara smiled, not coldly, not cruelly. "Just, with depth. I've lived long enough to know who I'm not," she said. "That's something you should try." Eli didn't respond, but his eyes flicked to the commissioner, who suddenly looked like he remembered something. Something from years ago, but he said nothing. Eli pulled a folded sheet from his inner jacket and handed it to the commissioner. Effective immediately. He said, "I'm not just here as field lead. This is a signed federal order." The commissioner read it once. Then his eyes shot up. "You're taking over the department." Eli nodded. "Interim Director, Oversight of Misconduct Investigations Citywide." He looked at Knox. "Starting now." The commissioner was still holding the federal order, but his hand had dropped slightly as if it had weight beyond paper. Cameras kept rolling. Phones stayed up. No one dared to speak. Knox's shoulders sagged as Drew clicked the SUV door open behind him. The same hands that had once shoved civilians now shook too much to push it closed. A burst of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Reporters whispered. An assistant whispered into a commissioner's ear. "The mayor's office is watching. They want a statement." Eli didn't turn. "Tell them to wait." From down the street, another squad car pulled up, but it didn't stop beside the SUV. It parked directly in front of the commissioner. Two plainclothes federal agents stepped out. They didn't even ask. They handed him a sealed envelope. The commissioner opened it, eyes scanned, his jaw locked. "You're suspending me," he said, voice raw. Eli replied softly. "You signed off on too many of his reports without reading them." Gasps again, this time aimed higher. Eli didn't gloat. He adjusted his cuff. "We follow the chain of command, even when it's rotten." For 5 full seconds no one moved. Not a breath. Even the city's noise seemed to pause just long enough for everyone to feel what had shifted. Mara stepped forward. "Power isn't how loud you speak. It's how quietly you hold your line." Eli turned to the nearest reporter. This wasn't undercover work, this was observation. We wanted to see how the system behaves when no one thinks they're being watched. The reporter nodded, stunned. Mara turned toward the crowd, broken cane still in hand. She smiled once softly. My eyes may not work anymore, but I see people clearer than ever.